Denver has done it. For the first time in franchise's 55-year history, Denver has made the NBA Finals. Shout out to Jokic. Shout out to that team. Very talented top to bottom. But today we're here to overview the current playoff series in the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics. We're going to talk about some retirements, one that's very near and dear to my heart. And of course, we're going to dive into some takeaways for the round 2 losers here in the NBA playoffs. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Bakari Steve. How you doing? How you feeling on this Tuesday morning?
Yeah, we're on the verge of having a Denver versus Miami finals. Probably going to be one of the lowest rated in years. But, it's good to see some new teams in the mix.
Right. We'll talk about that later as parity. Is it a beautiful thing, right? But this is your early reminder to support us as, hey, we're already past 250 subscribers. We're on the road to 300. Help us get there. We can't thank you guys enough for any and all support, and it would be amazing if we could hit that 300 mark. But without further ado, this is the Anomaly Podcast. Let's get into it. We're going to start here with Denver as last night they swept the Los Angeles Lakers. They made their first ever finals appearance, as we mentioned. They were down 15 at halftime. They overcame a LeBron 40-point, basically triple-double. And like I've said twice now, first franchise appearance in the finals ever. Seems like this Nuggets team can do no wrong, right? Just quick thoughts about this Nuggets team. As again, they're not the flashiest, but they do pretty much everything else the right way.
Yeah, they're one of those teams where it's like they were down by 15, and I was like, man, if they can just get it to within 10 going into halftime, I think they can pull this off.
You did say that.
They're one of those deadly teams where it's like you can never count them out because Jokic, his playmaking ability and his ability to dominate in that aspect of the game, it's very scary because it keeps everybody else involved. It keeps guys like Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Aaron Gordon. It keeps the defense on their toes, and it keeps the teammates involved. And when you have all guys starting to heat up at the right time, you're going to form a very dangerous team. Not to mention, their defense really stepped up in the second half. Of course, we know LeBron had like 10 points in the second half. He looked a little gassed because he played all but 4 seconds in the game. But regardless, they were able to get the job done. They had their mission, and here they are.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be the first to sit up here and admit that, look, both of us had Lakers winning this series. It was just because of the overall size and the depth of the Lakers. We figured that the star power even would get them over the top, but this Nuggets team shut us up quick. This Nuggets team, like I said, it seems like they can do no wrong right now.
Well, the real reason we had the Lakers winning is because we got the wrong NBA script. The NBA actually leaked some scripts out, and it said it was going to have a Boston versus Lakers finals for the first time since 2008.
Well, that sounds too good to be true, right? and obviously that ended up being too good to be true. But still heating up. The Miami Heat tonight, they play Game 4 against the Boston Celtics, and they're on the verge to becoming the first ever 8 seed to make the NBA Finals. We've seen an 8 seed get to the Eastern Conference Finals. We've never seen one make the NBA Finals, and the Heat, like I said, they're on the verge to do just that. They're up 3-0 against the Boston Celtics. This is another series that we were completely wrong. Throughout the first 2 rounds, we were pretty much right on most of the series. We're probably going to get both of these wrong now, as Boston is probably going to get swept tonight, and Miami is going to be Denver in the NBA Finals. Do you think Miami can get it done tonight? Do you think they close it out at home, Game 4? Or do you think Boston survives just one more game?
I think they close it out Game 4. We saw how pitiful and lackluster the Celtics came out in Game 3. And that just can't happen, and especially in must-win games. So I think regardless of how the Celtics come out and respond today, unless, the Jays, JB, and JT come out and have, like 35 each, and you get contributions from everybody like Marcus Smart and Derek White, I don't believe that'll happen. I think Jimmy will have his Miami team focused and locked in and have another outstanding game against the Celtics team, who I think everybody had going, to the finals.
Right. I mean, it's like every single round we've picked against the Miami Heat.
Exactly.
I picked them to beat New York, but I mean, for the majority, like I picked against them twice now, and I think I'm going to pick against them again in the NBA Finals. So if you're a Miami Heat fan, listen to this podcast and watch us pick the Denver Nuggets, because the Heat might come out and surprise the world. But the Finals preview, right? We're going to have an episode where when the Finals is officially set, we're going to dive into the matchups. We're going to talk about it as they go underway June 1st. But Denver, Miami, as we mentioned, they're likely to meet. The 2 times these teams met in the NBA regular season, Denver was 2-0, but there was only a total of 9 points in margin between both of those games. Denver, Miami, early favorites. I think I know your answer, but my only question is, if Tyler Hero can make his way back, Miami, we're not expecting the 20-point per game Tyler Hero because he just broke his shooting hand, right? So that's going to take some time to get some touch back, or maybe not. Maybe Tyler Hero shocks the world, but do you give Miami any chance as of right now?
I actually do because they have some guys on their team that were part of that bubble finals. They have some guys that have, their big 3, Bam and Tyler Hero. They were there for that. Jimmy, of course, was there. And I think one of the things that bothered them against the Lakers in that finals was the lack of bodies they had. It's like they had a lot of people hurt, and they didn't have enough bodies to really just go out there continuously against that Lakers team in 2020. Flash forward now, they have a lot of undrafted players, but they have a lot of guys in the rotation. I think that they have a shot, especially if Tyler Hero can come back and at least give you, if he can give you 15 to 17 with his ability to stretch the floor, I think you're always going to have a shot because on the Nuggets side of the basketball, I think it will come down to how aggressive is Nikola Jokic when it comes to scoring the ball. We know about his passing and his rebounding. He has some really off the charts passes. But I think in the series against the Heat, he's going to have to look to be a lot more aggressive when it comes to finding his own shot.
Yeah, I mean, Nikola Jokic, he seems to praise a lot of undersized, quote-unquote, centers, as they're still 6'9", 6'10", but he always says that they give him the most issues, right? The most difficulties on offense because they're, I guess, underneath him, right? I mean, Kevin Durant came out and said over the years that guys like Patrick Beverley, who are just so much smaller than him, they get under him. They give him a lot of issues when he's trying to, be effective on offense. Nikola Jokic, he would be going up against Bam Adebayo. Bam Adebayo is an all-NBA defender. We know that if we get the consistent version of Bam that we saw in the last 2 games, this series is going to be very interesting because we know Jokic is instead of a 30-point triple-double, he might have a 20-point triple-double, and that might be all the difference. To have Jimmy get you, if they can stay close in this series, I think Jimmy can be the guy to take you over the top. Yeah. And I mean, again, we're not expecting much from Tyler Hero. How much is he going to play? Is he going to play at all?
Right.
With a broken hand, his broken hand there in the first round, but he is projected to be back, and if they win tonight, he's going to have a full week to rest. Both of these teams now are going to have a full week to rest until June 1st when the finals do kick off next Thursday. But I think this series is going to be very interesting, and I think, even though I know who I'm going to pick overall, I think this is going to be a very close series, and I think, again, in a way, I think I might be rooting for the Heat as an 8 seed to win the finals.
Yeah.
That's like some NBA 2K stuff, right? I'm kind of hoping. But, it's an interesting finals. I guess my only question to you is, you mentioned it in the intro, with the parity that the league has now, do you think it's a better thing to have 2 teams like this that, I will say there was probably out of the 16 teams that made it, 8 to 10 of them you can make an argument to make the finals, right? Or to legitimately be a force to reckon with. In years past, we didn't have that. In those Warriors and Cavs years when it was Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, the Fantastic Four there, we knew it was going to be the Warriors. We knew it was going to be the Cavs. It was just a matter of how they got there. Yeah. Do you prefer to have that juggernaut that all the teams in the league are trying to take down, or do you prefer the parity that we've seen this season?
No, I like the parity. I think that it's a good way to get all fans involved, regardless of who they're rooting for. It's a way to keep people engaged because I remember during those Warriors runs, I wouldn't even watch the first 2 rounds. I'd start watching the Warriors come to conference finals. I mean, unless there was a huge game, but I'd start watching the Warriors come to conference finals when they were going against the Rockets for the 5th time because you just knew that was going to be the matchup. Same thing in the East. As a Cavs fan, I'd watch, all the rounds, but it was you really didn't start sitting up in your chair until, okay, we're up 3-1 in the conference finals. Let me go watch the Warriors and see how do we get it done.
Right.
I like the way it is now because it's unpredictable. We have an 8 seed that's on the verge of beating a 2 seed who look like, contenders. This same 8 seed beat the number 1 team in the East.
My title favorite.
Exactly. We have the Denver Nuggets, who I didn't necessarily have the most faith in all year. Here they are. They just swept the LeBron James led Lakers, who also probably should have been in the conference finals.
Right.
And they're in the finals. So I like this. It's a way to keep everybody involved. It's a way, I like the way the game is too, because we've seen that, you know, we don't need these super teams really to compete. If you just have a star, maybe two, and a solid team around that, it means a little bit more in the long run. And I like the way that it is. You know,
I love parity in the NBA because, again, it's a year like this where Denver we always saw as a team that's really good, but they just couldn't get over the hump, and here they are. As it's going to be a very surprising finals. Nobody, I can guarantee you, had, unless you're a Miami truther, right? If you live down south in South Beach, unless you live there, right? You didn't have this finals predicted, right? And, you know, I love parity. I think parity also creates delusion with some of those mid-tier teams like the Wizards, right? As they're in the Blazers, they're just going to be stuck in purgatory there for years. But I think this is a huge year for the play-in. As two play-in teams made it this far, I think the play-in is going to be here to stay for a long time now because of this season. And, you know, again, I love parity, and I would rather have it than a juggernaut where we kind of know the most important time of the year is the NBA Finals. We already knew the Warriors were going to be in it. We already knew the Miami Heat and the Beatles, or, you know, and the Heatles were going to be in it. I think I prefer where there's uncertainty, right? Yeah. Speaking of uncertainty, LeBron James, after being swept last night, came to the post-game presser, and, you know, he had some questions. But it was just a very sad interview overall. It was 14 minutes of just uncertainty from LeBron James as they kept asking him about next season. Is this team ready to contend? Is this team, you know, going to be ready for next year? What are your plans this offseason? Every single time LeBron would say, I don't know. You know, I'm not sure if I'm even going to return next season. I have a lot of decisions to make. Again, like I said, very sad interview to watch. But, I mean, one of his last goals, we had a report before the show, but one of his last goals was to play with his son, Bronny James. That would still be 2 years away. Bronny is going to USC next year. He's gonna need at least a year there, and then he can come into the draft. So LeBron would have to at least play the next 2 years. But that report came out, and he said it's no longer a priority to him if it's not to Bronny. Is there any chance here? I guess my question to you is, on a scale of 0 to 100, what is the chances LeBron takes or retires?
I'll say there's like a 45% chance he retires. I think that, you know, we know LeBron, he's a master with the media, so he knows how to say certain things to kind of hide his true intentions. You know, he knows what to and what not to say, and I think he said everything that he wanted to say to keep everybody on their toes, including the Lakers organization, so that if he does come back, they make enough moves that he won't have to play 48 minutes in a game 4 of them getting swept and have 40 points. You know. And if he does want to play with Bronny, I wouldn't rule out him retiring for a year and then come back when Bronny's in the league. LeBron, to me, the reason I don't think he will retire, at least not in the offseason, is because, to me, I feel like he deserves a farewell tour like Kobe. I think LeBron, he will say that whatever season's going to be his last, I think he will say beforehand, hey, I thought about it, and I'm going to retire this, or I'm going to not play this season, and then the next year I'll come back and play with Bronny, that'll be my last season. Or he'll say, you know, I can only do this one more year. I'm going to give it everything I got this year, and that's it. That's going to be my career. I think LeBron James he's, you know, with him arguably being the greatest player ever, I think that him retiring in the offseason would be a crime. I think he deserves a farewell tour. I think he deserves the love and recognition that the league will give him every single night for 82 games. Just one more year. I think that if I'm LeBron, I think he wants a farewell tour too. So that's why I'm saying I don't think he will. However, if he does, at the same time, since he gives it 100% every offseason especially, I wouldn't be surprised because he's been through a lot. His body's been through a lot. So, yeah.
I mean, I want you to catch on to what I'm doing here, but I think there is a 6% chance he officially retires. You made a lot of great points there with his retirement tour. I believe, like you said, that's going to happen, 100%, right? Especially for a player of LeBron's caliber, as he might join Jordan as a player that has his jersey retired amongst the league for teams he didn't even play for, right? But LeBron James, I'm going to give him a 6% chance to officially retire, a 23% chance he takes the year off to come back and join Bronny in 2025, right? As Bronny would then be eligible to join the league. But that's going to do it for LeBron James. Again, I don't think he retires. I think there's a higher chance he takes a year off.
Yeah.
But coming over to Carmelo Anthony, I'm going to let you have the floor first, as I have a heartfelt message for Carmelo. Sad day here in sports.
Yeah, just because Melo retired, I won't name 5 better scorers than him all time, out of respect to you and your values with Melo. But Carmelo Anthony, he's one of those players where, regardless of when you started watching basketball, especially if you're our age or older, Carmelo Anthony is one of those guys where he retires, that the league is officially reaching a new era. He played 19 years, and even though he didn't play this last year. It's the official retirement that, hey, he's never going to step back on the court as a player again. Even with LeBron, or, in the midst of LeBron's, he's thinking about retirement. It's just these guys are getting a lot older. I remember when Dwayne Wade, it still doesn't feel like Dwayne Wade retired. It still feels like he should kind of be playing. A lot of these guys, it's sad because, we grew up watching these guys. These are the people we fell in love with in the game of basketball. Whether it was like the Lob City Clippers or, the young OKC, who are all now in their mid-30s, reaching that stage of their career. Carmelo Anthony, he's one of the best players I've seen on live TV. He's one of those players where it was like he shot it every time. He thought it was going to go in. Obviously, we know that he was blackballed for that year. It's because he didn't want to come off the bench. I'm glad he changed his ideology towards the end of his career. But regardless of what anybody thinks, Carmelo Anthony, he gave it his all for every team he was on. Great career, great score, great Olympian. I think that goes unnoticed for a lot of people too. The Olympic accolades he received mean just as much as any NBA accolades, because it takes a special kind of player to go overseas continuously throughout their career and bring home gold medals. So shout out Melo for a great career.
I'll be honest. This notification, when I got it, I was in the middle of my work shift. It gave me chills, right? Just to read the title that Carmelo Anthony is officially retired from the NBA. There's very few athletes for everybody that will leave an impact on them forever. And Carmelo Anthony's my favorite basketball player of all time. He's one of the reasons I fell in love with the game. And if there's one thing he taught me and the rest of the world, it's that this game is about a bucket. And Melo did that for his entire 19-year career. And throughout that 19-year first ballot Hall of Fame career, which he will be here in a couple years, he was an All-NBA 75 member, right? One of the 75 greatest players to ever play amongst his peers. He's 9th on the all-time scoring list, which I would say he would have been in the top 5, top 6 range if he wasn't blackballed from the league for a full season. And his situations later in his career weren't as bad as they were, right? They weren't as a smaller role as he was accustomed to early in his career. 10-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA, NBA scoring champion in 2013. He was an All-NBA rookie first team in 2004, which in my opinion he was still robbed of the Rookie of the Year. He was an NBA Social Justice Champion Award in 2021, which aside from his marital incident, he's been a class act in his career, right? He's an NCAA champion. Like you mentioned, he is a 3-time Olympic gold medalist. Gold medalist. There we go, right? He went there 4 times, won 3. He's a top 5 offensive scorer this game has ever seen, as I think the top 5's probably MJ, Kobe, LeBron, and KD. I don't think, and Melo's right there at 5. I don't think there's any other argument for other players. Maybe T-Mac.
Wilt.
No.
Allen Iverson.
He's a decorated scorer, decorated Olympian, and overall basketball player, class act. Again, like you mentioned, I lost a bit of my childhood here, and farewell, Melo, and you best believe I'm still putting those 3 to my domes here, any chance I can get. But stay mellow, right? Stay mellow. But we're going to move over here to the takeaways on the second round of losers here in the NBA playoffs.
I do want to say one thing about Melo, though. The thing I will always remember about Melo is, 2015 NYC All-Star Game? Man, that was such a great performance he put up there. He shot like 3 of 20. He had like 7 open corner threes. No, I'm kidding. I won't.
If you guys are interested in joining a new podcast, if you're interested in joining the Anomaly podcast with me, applications are now open. Okay, so if you want to join, Bakari is now going to be on his 2-week here. So if you guys want to, DM us, right? But for the Golden State Warriors, for me, my takeaway from them this season, as this is round 2 of our takeaways, is that they were missing their vet. They were missing their Sean Livingston, their Andre Iguodala. Because as a Cavs fan, the most annoying things about those Warriors teams that had the Fantastic Four, they had the star players, they had the star talent. It wasn't all the three-pointers or the talent they had. It was their veteran depth. Because the Sean Livingstons, the Andre Iguodala to the world They would always come in, they would always make the right play, and they were really the reasons to me that those teams seemed unstoppable, right? On top of the Kevin Durant and Steph Curry combo. We'd see the stars on the bench. Steph Curry, KD, they take a little rest because they're up 10. And if we still had LeBron or Kyrie on the court, as fans, we're like, man, it's go time. We're coming back. We're going to take a lead, and we're going to really switch the momentum in this game. But then you had Sean Livingston, a guy who never missed a mid-range shot in his life, come in and hit 3 or 4 contested mid-ranges. Iguodala would occasionally hit that occasional 3 or make that game-changing steal. That was the unfair parts of those Warriors teams for me. And I believe they missed that this year. I think, when you rely on a younger Jordan Poole, a guy who hasn't really been there, he's a champion, all respect to him, but he doesn't have the championship pedigree and he doesn't have the veteranship of a Andre Iguodala or a Sean Livingston.
Yeah, for me, I said that they need to start thinking about their future. What I mean by that is, I think the roster, sure, I think they were missing that vet off the bench, but they have a lot of older guys. Andrew Wiggins, this is his 9th or 10th season already, which is hard to believe. Kevon Looney's been in the league for like 7 years. Steph is 35. Draymond is like 33. Clay is 32, 33. He's up there too. Not to mention they had a dinosaur and Andre Iguodala on their bench. They have some older guys, and to me, I think that their money is too tied up in those guys to kind of fully move forward. And I understand their thought process. They still have 35-year-old Steph who plays like an MVP still every season. Klay Thompson, he gives you a few good games every here and there. Draymond, same thing. He'll give you some vintage stat lines of like 11, 8, 9, and like 5 steals. But that's every once in a while. I think that this Warriors team has relied so much on positionless basketball for them. How many times have we seen this Warriors team come out with 4 guards in a wing, in the fourth quarter and just kill the other team because their wing is Andrew Wiggins, who's getting by whoever the other center is, and you have 4 elite shooters on the court. I think the Warriors need to move back into, especially the reason I think they lost to the Lakers is because they didn't have those same position players that the Lakers have. They didn't have any of those big wings and big centers to guard AD or even guys like Lonnie Walker on the perimeter. Even though Lonnie Walker is not that tall, they still don't have that. I mean, Kuminga plays more of the 4 and the 5 than his actual 3 position. I think that the Warriors, they need to find out what to do with Klay and Draymond. And I think if they can get their money off the books with Klay and Draymond, maybe ship them somewhere else. Unfortunately, I know they don't want to, but if you can get younger in those positions or get younger or just, get off with some money, I think that you're starting a potential rebuild while still being somewhat competitive, getting younger pieces for Klay and Draymond to keep around Steph. I think that'll be a great start for the Warriors.
No, absolutely. Moving over to the Phoenix Suns, for me, they were doomed from the start, and by that, I mean when they re-signed DeAndre Ayton, when they matched his deal from the Indiana Pacers, which, by the way, is the best thing to happen in recent Pacers history, is that the Suns matched the deal on DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton's a former number 1 overall pick who spends more time complaining with poor body language than playing a championship role and trying to win meaningful games. We've seen it the last 3 years in the playoffs, but especially this past year, you constantly saw Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, with their veteran, with their playoff experience, trying to get in his ear, trying to give him some advice, or even Monty Williams. And he doesn't want to hear anything those guys are saying. He's looking the other way. He's acting like a child. And, it's clearly his head is not in the right spot for a winning organization. I think the Suns are they're looking to change things up this offseason. Bet your mortgage that DeAndre Ayton is not a Phoenix Sun next season.
Yeah, DeAndre Ayton and even Chris Paul, I don't think they're going to be there next year. Maybe more so Chris Paul than DeAndre Ayton. The big reason DeAndre Ayton, you could say, is the one who got Monty Williams fired, not giving any effort, making Jokic look like, the best center of all time. But for me, I said more depth equals more success for this Phoenix Suns team. I think that if you can get off of DeAndre Ayton, if you can get off of Chris Paul and bring in better rotational players to put in your rotation to kind of help when your 2 stars are out of the game, I think that you'll be in a better spot because they didn't have anybody. When Kevin Durant and Devin Booker were out of the game, they didn't have anybody, especially when Chris Paul was hurt. DeAndre Ayton doesn't play like a number 1 pick. Their best player was Cam Payne. Cam Payne was out of the league 3 years ago. So that should tell you everything you need to know about that. I think that you can look to sign some guys for maybe the minimum this year in the offseason. Maybe you actually have to go out and get a Dylan Brooks or a Bruce Brown or somebody like that, or maybe it's whatever you get in return from trading Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton, but whatever you do, the first thing should be getting rotational players, getting guys that that are in the rotation 6 through 8, 6 through 9. I think Kevin Durant and Devin Booker can take care of everything else when it comes to the starting lineup. Maybe they need a facilitator like Tyus Jones just to, help them get into their offenses. But I think you need to absolutely bring in pieces 6 through 9 or 6 through 8 and bring in some of those guys that can either knock down buckets off the bench or can come in and play good defense.
We know there's a Hall of Fame point guard out there on the market this offseason. There should be 2 of them.
Yeah.
One in Russell Westbrook, one in James Harden. But we're going to stick here with James Harden, as there's been rumors he might join the duo of Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. It's going to be the 2.0 of the Brooklyn Nets there. All you're doing is replacing Kyrie with Devin Booker. What are the chances James Harden joins the Phoenix Suns this offseason?
I'll say 0, only because James Harden is looking for a deal that is north of 4 years, $200 million.
The interesting thing is that he's interested to go back to the Rockets, and Jalen Green sat down with Paul George recently. And was it Paul George? I believe it was.
Yeah, it was Paul George.
It was Paul George on Podcast P. Shout out to him. But he basically said that, with his comments, he didn't want the Rockets to go out there and sign James Harden. He said that it would hinder his progression as a player. And, if Jalen Green's going to be their guy, bringing in a guy like James Harden might not be the best thing.
Well, first of all, Jalen Green is going to be career 6 man, so I don't think he has much say in organizational matters.
He's a better version of Colin Sexton.
Yeah, and that's not saying much. And I did see that clip, but I think he was more so saying that he could see both sides. He could see it hindering him and see him growing his game. And I think for the Rockets are going to trying to start get relevant again. They want to bring in just names to kind of put. They just want to kind of start putting things on the board, whether it's going out to get Jaylen Brown or James Harden. I think that getting James Harden, it doesn't really make sense why James Harden would go there. It doesn't make sense why Houston would really want him. But if you do get him, you kind of start setting things in motion as far as your younger players. You start, James Harden is your starting point guard.
Right.
Kevin Porter Jr. is now your 6 man, and it starts setting things like that.
Gives the fans hope.
Exactly. You're right. So, unless
false hope, but yes.
Yeah, unless the Phoenix can get rid of DeAndre Ayton and Chris Paul's contract and get nothing in return. And when I say nothing, I mean not have to pay anybody in return. They won't have enough money. And I think James Harden is at the point in his career where he's saying, I'm going to sign my last mega deal so I can get all my money on the way out.
It's not a bad way to go, but I just, for the Rockets standpoint, when you have a young team and you need to grow them, maybe getting a facilitator to get Sengun the ball, to get Jabari Smith in the right positions, or Jalen Green even. But for a guy that's so ball dominant like James Harden, even if they did make the play-in, he's not going to show up, right? It's not going to be the prime James Harden that we all knew and loved there for years and years. I'm not the GM. I'm the guy just behind the mic critiquing what they do as a front office. But we'll go here to the Eastern Conference, where the Philadelphia 76ers, they lost in the second round in 7 games to a Jason Tatum masterclass of 51 points, most points in a Game 7 in NBA history. Kind of crazy we've had 2 of those performances here in the playoffs. But the Sixers, right? For me, accountability and maturity is missing in that organization. It's a complete mess over there in Philly, especially the last couple weeks. We just talked about James Harden, and I think this is the team that leads the league in finger pointing and or just blaming, right? I think they lead the league in that, and they're a playoff team, right? I think the change is going to have to start when accountability is taken, first off, and that's going to start with their MVP, Joel Embiid. He has to take the accountability for these Sixers woes over the years in the playoffs. There's always been a scapegoat. There is no longer a scapegoat. It has to start with Joel Embiid showing accountability, and you can't come to the post-game presser joking about that stuff, right? And Harden, if he stays. Harden, you underperformed in the playoffs. First, what's new, right, with James Harden? But it's not Doc's fault that you failed to be a superstar, James Harden, and it's not Doc Rivers' fault that Embiid failed to be a superstar. So the scapegoat is not going to be Doc Rivers in the situation. It's not going to be James Harden. It's Joel Embiid, and he's the guy in that franchise. He's the face of the franchise. Accountability has to start with you. Second thing is maturity, and I believe that starts with the new coach. Right now, they're linked to Nick Nurse. If he comes in, he's going to have to implement some maturity in these younger players, and he's going to have to mature on his own, right, as well, right? And I believe, like I said, your star players, James Harden, Joel Embiid, they can't come to the post-game presser blaming everybody but themselves And they can't come and blame the coaches. They can't joke about their playoff woes and shortcomings. So accountability and maturity is missing in that Sixers organization. I think if they can get that, they're going to be in the right direction here to continue this process.
Yeah, and for me, I said, where do they go now? And what I mean by that is, it's more and more likely that James Harden is going to leave. I don't even know if he has any true interest in returning to Philadelphia. I know he said he wouldn't play for Doc Rivers again, but I mean, there was a report. What was it? Just last week that said he all but signed a contract to Houston already. So as far as most people know that Houston contract, that Houston deal is a done deal. So what I say, and where do they go now? It's what do you do around Joel Embiid? Joel Embiid, he's 29 years old already. Obviously, he had a few years shaved off of his career because of that foot injury, the foot and the back injuries that he had coming into the league. But it's what do you do with this roster now? Do you keep guys like Tobias Harris around? Do you keep guys like PJ Tucker around? And if you do, what are you doing it for? You don't have that secondary star. I think that Philadelphia, at best, is a play-in team with just Joel Embiid. We saw the trajectory they were on. What was it, right before the James Harden deal? And yeah, they were playing decent basketball, but the East has only gotten better since then.
Right.
Like I said, I mean, Atlanta was a top seed in the East when Philadelphia traded for James Harden. I think, obviously we know teams like Chicago, Atlanta, Miami, even Toronto, and all the Eastern Conference playoff teams.
Right.
They're all better than Philly would be if they didn't have James Harden. So it depends on the front office. And like you said, with the coach, it starts with the coach. It depends on what type of coach you're getting. Are you getting a coach for player development, or are you getting a coach to win now? And then once you get the coach, it's what type of roster do you want to establish? Do you want to build around Joel Embiid, or do you start listening to offers for Joel Embiid to start another rebuild after this one is practically done and failed? Yeah. So I think the Philadelphia has a lot of different things to think about this direction, especially if James Harden doesn't come back. And if he does come back, they need to figure out a better roster to get around those guys. I think you have to go get another scorer, especially for playoff time, because we know that these two like to choke. And so I think it'll be very interesting for Philadelphia this offseason, because this could be the year that we start seeing Joel Embiid floated in rumors. And we never saw anything like the Kevin Durant trade. We never saw somebody like Kevin Durant get traded. But I think the return for Joel Embiid would be almost if not more than what Kevin Durant got traded for.
Yeah, I mean, with the coach, they've had a player development coach. I can't think of his name right now. He was there when the process started.
Brett Brown.
Brett Brown. There you go. Yeah, Brett Brown, and then they've also had a win now coach in Doc Rivers. So we've seen both sides of the coin. It's what does Joel Embiid want to experiment with now, and what does this organization want to experiment with now? Because in a year we could see Joel Embiid get traded, and a team he's linked to is the New York Knicks, and we're going to switch to them now as the number 6 team. They lost in the second round in 6 games to the Miami Heat, and to me, don't make Jalen Brunson try to be Luka Doncic. Jalen Brunson came over from the Dallas Mavericks, where he witnessed firsthand that he witnessed the limitations that only one guy can do on a basketball court compared to a full team effort, right? And of course, Luka did basically it all last year, and they made it to the Western Conference Finals. Brunson was there for 2 years, right? If I'm not mistaken. So he saw what Luka did the first year by himself. Then he saw when he took a step up, when Dorian Finney-Smith took a step up, and that team just overall took a step up. They made it to the Western Conference Finals. So I think you have to start here with the Knicks. Julius Randle has to go. How easy is that going to be? Not very easy at all. But Julius Randle has to go. R.J. Barrett, I think this is his last year to really prove himself, or otherwise he's out the door after next season. I believe this team needs to get that co-star if you can, but don't pigeonhole yourself. Don't overpay. Don't go out there and pay 6 first-round picks for Rudy Gobert, right? Don't just get a name. Get someone who fits and for the right price. Whether if that's Jaylen Brown, who's going to be probably your priority, or whether if it's like a guy like Karl Anthony Towns or Pascal on the low, right? Get that co-star that's going to be better than Julius Randle, a guy that can help Jalen Brunson in the playoffs when it matters most. Don't make Jalen Brunson try to be Luka. Don't have him go out there and do it on his own. Provide him with that co-star, someone who else can put the ball in the basket.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much said a lot of what I had. I said these are make or break decisions on the way for the New York roster. Obviously, it starts with getting rid of Julius Randle, like you said, whether that's going in the draft to get somebody, because you could always flip that pick, or trade in the future, or it's just, simply getting him off the book so you can go sign another guy. Julius Randle, he's terrible in the play. He's one of the all-time worst playoff performers, and he has an even worse attitude. I don't understand how he can even play in New York. I don't understand how he can, what team will really want him. But there are teams desperate enough like Portland to get somebody of his regular season skill set to add with their stars. But you have to first get rid of Julius Randle. I think that, you have to start looking at Tom Thibodeau. I think some of his practices, some of his coaching is a little outdated. I think, yes, they made it to the second round this year, but I think they could have been better. Obviously, he outcoached J.B. Bickerstaff. That's not saying a lot. But, you might have to look in a different way for a roster as far as, coaching goes, especially after this next year. We'll see how it goes. But like you said, you have to start building around Jalen Brunson. He is obviously your best player. Even though he wasn't the all-star and all-NBA team member like Julius Randle was, Jalen Brunson is far and away better than Julius Randle. I think R.J. Barrett is far and away better than Julius Randle. But R.J. Barrett is on a short clock too, like you said. And they have to figure out what to do with all their role pieces and their draft capital. The New York Knicks, they especially these last few years, they're known to hold on to these young guys because they show a lot of development. But, a lot of these young guys are already 25, 26. You have a lot of draft capital, and it's like if you're not really going to do anything except use it yourself, you might want to start trying to see what you can get for that. I'm sure there are a lot of great pieces they can get, especially young stars. You can trade guys like Emmanuel Quickly, Obi Toppin, and like 2 firsts and get somebody. You have a lot of depth that a lot of other teams want, and you have a lot of draft picks that a lot of older teams want. So I think that this season you fully commit into making yourself a contender, or you pull the plug and say, we want to try something different. And that starts with getting rid of your stars. We're getting rid of Julius Randle and maybe R.J. Barrett, and of course bringing in somebody new for the locker room.
We just got a report in the middle of the show here that the Celtics, there's a report that came out that they were affected by the Ime Udoka firing, right? No doubt the sky is blue, right? But it says that they never got over how that situation was handled. Is that an excuse here for their playoff woes here in the Eastern Conference Finals?
Absolutely not. You've had a whole year pretty much,
right?
And you're back. You were back in the same position you were in last year, regardless. Joe Mazzulla was on that staff. The fact that you can't show him the same respect you had for Ime Udoka, it shows to me that the Celtics team has a lot of growing up to do still, and that starts with your leader in Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, everybody. They have to be more mature. Yeah, you can blame Joe Mazzulla for not making adjustments, but Joe Mazzulla, he's doing his part. He's even taking the blame after the game for things that are clearly not his fault. Whether he's a rookie head coach or not, your team has to has to buy into what you're selling. And this Celtics team has not done that for Joe Mazzulla. Unfortunately, he might be on his way out as well. If this Celtics just really don't like the taste of the sweet in their mouth. And then after that, you have to really start looking guys like Jason Tatum in the face and saying, hey, we know you score 36 in 3 quarters, but can you score 2 in the fourth? Can you not turn the ball over? So
yeah, it's kind of wild that he's had only 1 field goal attempt in 3 straight games in the fourth quarter. As a guy who most people see as a top 5, top 10 player in the league, he's not stepping up to the moment. And I get it. They're playing aggressive defense on him. They're showing different coverages to make it very difficult for him to even get shots off. But you have to be that superstar. You have to go out there and make things happen, and that's just a part of being the Batman on certain teams. And he's just, again, like you said, they have a lot of growing up to do, which is crazy to say for a team that has more playoff experience than basically everybody in the league combined, right? Aside from LeBron James. But it's very shocking to see that they're going to use a scapegoat and a coach that isn't even there for over a year now.
Right.
But that's really going to do it for today's show. A bit of a shorter show, but that's just what happens when we fly through. We get to the point, and we don't do a lot of rambling. But today's topics are on your screen as we ran through the conference finals. We talked about the Nuggets making some history there, and the Heat on the verge of also making some history. We did the pre-preview for the NBA Finals, as it's likely we know the matchup already. Talked about Carmelo, top 10 player of all time, Carmelo Anthony, and his retirement. LeBron possibly retiring or taking a year off. And, of course, the takeaways from the second-round losers. Any last thoughts before we get out of here, or maybe a preview here for Thursday?
Yeah, Thursday it's an exciting show. We're going to do our first NBA draft lottery, mock draft, and this will be fun because there is a lot of talent even throughout this whole lottery. We know obviously of the Wembanyama sweepstakes, but there is a lot of talent deep through this lottery. This will be fun. It's kind of crazy that we'll be making a mock draft guys younger than us, but for the most part.
I didn't think about that, man. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, but it'll be fun.
Yeah, we've officially hit that age where we're actually older than guys that are going to be getting drafted and making millions of dollars. Insane. I blame my parents here for not giving me 6'9", 250 jeans. But regardless, again, that's going to do it for today's show. Help us get to 300 subs on the channel as we're about 50 away. But help us get to that mark as it would, we wouldn't be more thankful. It's amazing that we're even getting to this point where we could get 300 subs. As a couple weeks ago, it felt like we were at 150. We were happy with that just 2 weeks ago, and we've grown almost double, or not double, but on the verge of growing about double in just 2 weeks' time. But again, drop a like on the channel, subscribe to the channel, share the podcast. If you enjoy it, your best friend will too. And that's really going to do it for today's show. So we'll see you guys Thursday for the fantasy mock draft and this podcast. Not the fantasy mock draft. The NBA mock draft, right? The fantasy world that we're living in there. And also, Wednesdays and Fridays, we've been doing it, but some of you guys haven't been catching on. We do drop fantasy football content every Wednesday, every Friday. So 4 days a week, we're dropping content for you guys over on Instagram and TikTok as well. And go support us over there if you have a chance. That's going to do it. We'll see you guys on Thursday. We're out.